I bet you guys are wondering how I'm back here already. Well, let's just say it's a story for another time.
Because it's Thursday.
Hello, Watchtower Database, and welcome back to The Vanishing Point, the only bi-weekly YouTube show that goes over small chunks of the DCAU timeline to answer questions that you probably never even thought to ask. You know, the first time I watched Justice League Unlimited's The Once and Future thing, it didn't register to me that Chronos had come back from the future. The entire establishing shot of Neo Gotham for the Clintons' neighborhood just completely blew past me. Some kind of continuity guy I am. However, once this detail finally clicked, there was a huge chunk of the episode that no longer made sense to me.
Remember last summer when I didn't get tenure?
Yeah, they thought you were crazy because you kept insisting you were on the verge of discovering time travel.
This is the Batman Beyond era, right? The far future of
2039.
50 years from now, whenever now is? So why would anybody, especially a college department head in charge of tenure, be skeptical about the concept of time travel at this point in time? I mean, we've had instances of it all the way to the beginning of the DC animated universe in Batman the Animated Series. So what gives? Well, I've done a lot of thinking on it, and I think I've figured out the skepticism. Before getting to the answer though, I think we need to establish just what exactly time travel is. Sure, it may seem self-explanatory, but
it depends upon what the meaning of the word is.
Yeah.
I think it's worthwhile to lay out the explanation given to us by the DCAU source material, especially since the shows and comics that make up this universe get really technical with their explanation of what time travel is. One of the most interesting pieces of information about how time travel works actually comes to us from Superman Adventures number 26. Unlike most time travel stories though, this one doesn't involve a time machine. Someone can time travel without a time machine? What? Well, not just anyone. Mr. Mixius Pitlick. If you're not familiar with the character of If you're not familiar with the character of Mixius Pitlick, he's a fifth dimensional imp that shows up every 3 months to bug Superman when their dimensions come into alignment. Now, in this particular story, he tells us that fifth dimensional beings get a free pass through the fourth dimension, which allows him to go back through time and mess with a younger Clark Kent before he ever became Superman. This not only implies that, similarly to how many scientists theorize in the real world, the fourth dimension in the DCAU is represented by time, but also that it has a physical quality and can be traveled through. This actually is briefly touched upon in Static Shock as well, when Gear explains Nina's powers in the episode Flashback.
Your energy waves distort the space-time continuum and move you through it exponentially. You want to kick that in English?
Of course, the space-time continuum is a concept that gets thrown around a lot in time travel stories, so most of us get the gist of what he's saying, but have you actually ever stopped to think, what exactly is a continuum? The dictionary defines it as a continuous sequence in which adjacent elements are not perceptibly different from each other, although the extremes are quite distinct. So essentially, this would be where the two distinct extremes of the third and fourth dimension meet, similarly to how the third and fifth dimension meet every 3 months.
Until our dimensions come into alignment again in about, 3 months, give or take.
In fact, we get even more confirmation that there's a physical aspect to the bridge between the two dimensions in the Justice League episode Hereafter. This is the one where everyone thinks that Toyman killed Superman, but it turns out he accidentally sent him to the future. However, Batman's suspicions are raised whenever he inspects the crime scene to realize that while there's a lot of destruction, there are bits of the scenery that aren't accounted for. As he puts it,
matter can't be created or destroyed, just changed from one form into another.
And since it hadn't been changed to another form, but vanished altogether, this all ties into the physical aspect of this bridge in between the third and fourth dimensions. But honestly, this is all just a bunch of junk science in a world where Batman says stuff like,
E still equals MC squared, last I heard. Mass increases with speed. If a car hits us while we're frozen like this, we might trigger an atomic explosion.
Which doesn't make any sense at all. The mass, or M, and speed, C, are both on the same sides of that equation. So they wouldn't change each other, but would change the energy output. But here's the kicker. C in this formula doesn't represent general speed, but represents the speed of light. And since both that and the mass of the Batmobile are a constant, in this situation, Batman's worries are just a teeny bit misplaced. This is what you're here for, right? Me telling you that Batman's a crappy scientist?
Scientists suck.
Of course not. You're here because you want to know who actually invented time travel in this world, and why Chronos got laughed out of the room when he suggested he was on the verge of discovering it. Well, to answer the first part of that question, we don't really know who invented it. Of course, the earliest on-screen use of anything that resembled a time machine was the device that was used by Temple Fugit, the Clock King, in Batman the Animated Series episode Time Out of Joint, which was created by Professor Wakati, or as Batman calls him,
He's the father of quantum temporal theory, the structure of time.
I actually keep getting his name confused with Taika Waititi, so from now on I'm just gonna refer to him as Time Daddy. It's canon and you guys just need to accept it. Despite this being the first on-screen use of time travel though, when the League traveled to the past to track down Chronos, Jonah Hex drops this bomb on us.
I'm thinking you folks are time travelers.
Where would you get a crazy idea like that?
Experience? I've had an interesting life.
Sure, this could be a reference to one of the many times that Hex has tangled with time travelers in his comic book appearances, but since the DCAU is a continuity of its own, we can't really be too sure about that. I mean, remember the video that I did speculating about the relationship between the Legion of Superheroes and the Green Lantern Corps? A lot of that was based on comic book appearances as well, and look how much that holds up now that we live in a post-Justice League vs. the Fatal Five world. So, Time Daddy is most likely the inventor of time travel in the DCAU. But then what's up with the disregard shown to Chronos almost 60 years later? My first thought when researching was that maybe it has something to do with the type of time machine. After all, Vandal Savage did confirm to us that there are different types of models.
You could go back and stop yourself from destroying the world.
No, I couldn't. This design doesn't allow me to travel back to any time where I already exist.
Which, let's be honest, that concept is a little weird. Vandal Savage is an immortal caveman. He exists through almost all of time. So what would the point of this time machine be anyway? This theory about different means of time travel is backed up by the Gotham Girls web series when we see Catwoman time travel and looping back around on herself, as well as in Static Shock when we see multiple versions of our main characters concurrently with each other. But something about this still doesn't feel right. Like, put yourself in the conversation that Chronos must have had if this was the case. Hey, I'm on the verge of discovering time travel. I know there are multiple versions of time travel that already exist, but come on, man, you're crazy. I can't give you tenure. Doesn't make sense, does it? But get this. What if they just didn't know time travel had been discovered before? Let's look at who we know has time traveled or created some type of time machine up until this point. Vandal Savage's timeline in Hereafter got erased, and his other time machine that he used in Savage Time wasn't exactly public knowledge. Sure, it seems like Steve Trevor may have spread the legend of a time-traveling Wonder Woman ever since he came across her in the 40s, but that's not exactly evidence of time travel actually existing in the public consciousness. Toyman wasn't even aware that he had created time travel. And sure, I'm guessing there must have been some sort of public explanation as to how Superman returned after everybody thought he died, but there's still no concrete proof that the time travel aspect was divulged to the public at large. Nina, or Time Zone, completely erased her powered self from existence. Catwoman's time travel was far from public knowledge, and she ended up destroying the time machine that she used. Time Daddy was essentially a recluse, and so it's possible that his work wasn't very well known either. And even if it was, his device was so primitive in comparison to what Chronos had, I would probably think he was a little bit off of his rocker too, if that was all I had to base my knowledge of time travel off of. This leaves us with our only 3 confirmed publicly known time travelers. Booster Gold, who came back from 2462 over 400 years after David Clinton insists that he's cracked time travel. The Fatal Five, who are from even further in the future, and Timecode. Admittedly, we don't know much about Timecode other than the fact that he's
an outlaw physicist who planned to make a fortune by helping wanted criminals escape to the future of all places.
And while this news report could throw a wrench into my entire explanation of time travel not really being known by the public, it's also possible that Timecode himself is from some point in the future. And this could explain why his time machine took Virgil to Neo Gotham. If this is the case, Timecode's version of Neo Gotham is still about 10 years in the past from David Clinton's, but this could be explained away by him building the time machine and then immediately going to the past to hatch his schemes. And thus, while he is public knowledge, nobody really knows exactly where he is from. When he's from.
Not where. When?
Which could all lead to the college department head in charge of deciding tenure to think maybe time travel's just not possible for another couple hundred years, and thus laugh David Clinton out of the room. So now that this is all laid out, it's time again for our question of the day. We've had a lot of time travel episodes in the DCAU, and I'm curious to know which one is your favorite. I think personally for me, it's a toss-up between the Once and Future Thing and Future Shock, because in both cases, it was just really nice to return to the world of Batman Beyond after that show had already gone off the air. But once again, I'm just curious to hear what you guys think. So as always, be sure to leave your comments down under in the Australia box. Before I go, I want to thank all of these lovely people for helping to support us on Patreon this month. If you want to see your name on that list next time, you can always go over to patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower by clicking the link in the description below for a monthly pledge of as low as $1. While you're over there, you can check out other perks we've got available, like voting in polls to pick upcoming videos, custom artwork, live stream hangouts, merch, and much more. Speaking of merch though, if you want to grab yourself a t-shirt but don't really want to commit to being a monthly patron, you can always get one of those from our store on Teespring, which once again we'll leave a link to in the description box below. If you're interested in those but want to see what they look like on a real person before snagging one for yourself, here's a couple pictures of me and Ted wearing the shirts. There's should be a few on the screen. I don't know where they are. I'm pointing in different places, and James will have pictures somewhere. Here's just fill the screen. As always though, I've been Maddie Washburn, this has been The Vanishing Point, and we'll continue to stay those things so long as you continue to stay you. I love you guys a bunch, thanks for supporting us as always, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. But if you're not subscribed, you should subscribe. But if you don't want to subscribe, then I completely understand, and I'll see you when I see ya. Trust me, I'll see ya.